welcome to our Meet the Candidates special. I'm Brett Poirier, the general manager here at Medfield TV. We get to sit down with some of the state senate candidates. Today is someone you might be familiar with. He's from Medfield, Mass. I am with Joe Shortsleeve.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, so Joe, the whole idea is to get to know you, so tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, let's see. I'm first of all, I'm a Medfield resident, as you just said. I live, locally, just a few feet from this studio, in fact. I grew up in Newton, Massachusetts, and actually, it's an interesting story because when I was 10 years old, I attended 4th grade in Medfield. Yeah, my parents were like in between buying houses or something, and for some reason we ended up in Medfield for a year, and I never forgot it, and my brother Connor, who also lives here in Medfield, never forgot it. He's been here probably longer. I've only been here about 5 years, but he's been around here 10 or 12 years. But I went to BC High, Boston College High School in Dorchester, Massachusetts, and I did that by taking the Green Line from Newton Center downtown to Park Street, go downstairs to the Red Line, took it out to then Columbia Point, although it's called JFK now, and then walk across to BC High. And from there I went to Holy Cross College in Worcester. So I never went very far, but I did go out past 495, and then did Holy Cross, graduated from there, and then began a career in TV, which spanned some 35 years. Yeah, so, and I was on the road from Illinois to North Carolina to Connecticut, but then I did 30 years in Boston television.
And you're pretty comfortable then in the seat you're sitting right now. Yeah, exactly.
It's different to be on the other side.
Yeah.
But television is a wonderful medium, and I enjoyed all my 35 years in TV news, and wouldn't change one thing. But 35 was also good.
Plenty.
It was good. I had stood in enough snowbanks, doing live shots, and the industry has changed, quite a bit, with all the different levels of communication at this point, all the different social medias that come into play, whether it's Twitter or Snapchat or Facebook or just being online. So the medium has really blossomed at some point, but it's also become so fragmented.
What's your family makeup? What do you guys have back at home?
Well, let's see. I, growing up in the area here, growing up in the Boston area, I was one of 8 kids, and I was number 6 out of 8. So I always had a fight for the last donut. I mean, it was like Sunday morning, get that donut. Today, I was married for some 30 years and have 3 children. My kids are grown, so to speak. I have a 29-year-old daughter who's sort of in the same field, journalism. She's a freelance writer, and a son who is 28 who is in the computer fraud software area. He's a hockey nut. And then I have a 21-year-old who is at UMass Amherst, and she's at the Eisenberg School of Management there in the Hospitality and Tourism program.
So after you graduated from BC High, where'd you go from there? What was your education after that?
After BC High, I graduated there in '75, and my dad said to me, Joe, you can go to any college you want. He says, but if you go to Holy Cross, I'll pay for it. So it narrowed it right down for me. Next thing,
pretty good choice.
And I said, okay, how about I go to Holy Cross? Yeah. So I went to Holy Cross, but the first thing I did when I got to Holy Cross is I knew I had even then had an interest in communications. So literally, I think I arrived on a Saturday, and Sunday afternoon I was up at the college radio station, WCHC, starting to work for the college radio station. So.
Now, talking about the position that you're running for, the state senator, what is it that you think a state senator does? What do you guys do?
Well, I see the role of the state senator. Obviously, I've watched it from both sides. I'm from one side for years. I covered Beacon Hill for years. I know the state senators. I know personally Jim Timilty. In fact, it's somewhat odd that it's Jim Timilty's seat I'm running for because he was probably the person I was closest to as a journalist all these years. He was somebody who you learn over the years who are the honest, straightforward people. Timilty was one of them, and I always reached out to Timilty, and he gave me his cell phone, and I'd always call him up and say, what's going on with this piece of legislation? And he'd lay it out for me. Timilty and I had a very wonderful relationship. But what do I see? I see that role as a conduit, so to speak. I mean, you look at the issues that are happening on the local level, whether it's education or taxes or greedy developers or problems in our schools or things like that. I see that as listening, and I say that because I don't know how much listening's going on today. Listen, come up with a solution, and then work it out, okay? Talk to both sides and work it out. And I think that is something that I would be good at on the state level, not only because I understand the issues and I've been covering them for years, but I also know the players up there. I know, and I know the system. So I guess, to answer your question, what does a good state senator do? A good state senator listens, reacts, and gets results.
What do you think your experience is that you would bring to the state Senate seat?
Well, it's a good question, because as a journalist for 35 years, and I was an I-team reporter for more than 10 years, your job as a general assignment reporter and then as an I-team reporter, your job was at 9 a.m. you're confronted with a problem or a story, so to speak, whatever it may be. It may just be a neighborhood dispute, it may be legislation, it may be something to do with health care, it could be anything. But your job is to get an answer, do the research, get an answer, and by the end of the day, present it. Now, on the I-team, more complicated issues, a problem, dig down, search for solutions, and then maybe a week later or 10 days later or 2 weeks later or a month later, put it on TV with your answer. So my job, what I see is what I would do is I'm somebody who can look at a complicated situation, dig down, do the research, find the answer, come up with a solution. That's what I did for 35 years.
Why did you go from journalism? Why are you now running for the state Senate seat?
Well, like I say, I did 35 years of TV news, and it was clear to me that over the years you meet a lot of people. And in particular, you meet people in the public affairs arena, people who want to, publicize things or get things on TV or shape the conversation of the day or shape the news cycle. And one person I met was Scott Ferson from the Liberty Square Group in Boston, and I always said to myself, if I ever didn't do on-camera TV news anymore and I wanted to be on the other side as a media consultant, he's one person I'd talk to. And when I left Channel 4, WBZ TV, in October of 2014, I started working for Scott about 2 weeks later in November of 2014, and I've been with him ever since. And the Liberty Square Group, I'm a media consultant. In other words, I will help people with the media. In other words, what to say to the media, or perhaps what not to say to the media, how to get in the media, how to get away from the media if you have to. I mean, so my expertise is something that I carry with me today, and I just use it in different ways.
And now, simply put, what are the reasons someone should vote for you?
Well, I think that I'm somebody who understands the system. I'm compassionate in terms of my approach. I'm socially liberal. I'm fiscally conservative. Some people have described Jim Timilty as the most conservative Democrat on Beacon Hill. I'm an independent, but the same people have described me as the most like Jim Timilty, that I resemble him the most in terms of my approach to every day. I think that this district tends to be, obviously it's, the makeup is I think about 65% independent or more. And I think that as an independent, but somebody who is socially liberal and fiscally conservative, I can best represent the issues of this district. And this district is unique. It tends to be more conservative than the rest of the state.
Absolutely. Now, what are you running at? What party are you running as, and why do you feel it's important to run as that party?
Well, I'm running as an independent, and it's so in other words, I don't have the Republican or the Republicans or the Democrats' support, so to speak. It doesn't mean that I do have support from folks on both sides, but at the same time, as an independent, you are truly independent. But I think that what I'm doing is, I think that the harsh, partisan, political dialogue that's going on today has so many people bothered. And I love being in the independent middle ground space. As a journalist, I was always, for many of the years, I was always independent. I think I'm best suited as that. But the better answer to that question is, when I was at the town dump in Medfield, getting my nomination signatures, if I talked to 300 people, I want to tell you that 298 of them, when I said I'm an independent, their eyes light up. And they're like, oh, we're so sick of the partisan politics. We're so sick of the bickering that, oh, wouldn't it be nice to have somebody who's an independent?
You know, and that's one of the things you said is actually that you're looking to listen. You're looking to hear people out and talk to them. An incredible note is to actually be able to take in the fact that people are excited to have an independent running. Yeah, I mean, I call
it's rare. It's rare. You don't usually have a
nowadays.
choice on the state level.
Exactly, and I call it punchline politics now. Is no, like you said, no one's listening anymore. It's a lot of talking, and then I think it's more insulting, and it's no longer can we find an answer together. It's almost that it's can I make the other person look stupid and say something mean or whatever. And I think that that's a breath of fresh air is to be able to come in and have someone who's going to sit down and say, you know, I want to listen to the people, you know.
Yeah. Well, I think let's start by having a conversation.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
I mean, and I'm talking about the politicians, but listening to the people. And this is no reflection on your age because I don't know your age, but I'll tell you my age. I'm 60. And I think at age 40, I was pretty convinced that I had all the answers. You know, I had all the answers at age 40. I can tell you at age 60, I don't. It's one thing that I've learned. And I've learned to listen. And I know that sounds a little trite, but it's so true. I'm a much better listener today. Whether I'm listening to my kids about a particular thing going on in their life, or if I'm listening to a problem at the Liberty Square group with a corporation that needs, you listen. And then at that point, you do your research, you do your homework, and then you come back and you say, how about this, guys? You know, what would work here and what would work there? And then you find a solution.
Absolutely. Now, obviously, listening is the big thing. How are you going to get to people? How are they going to hear you out? What's the best way to reach you?
Well, I'm going to do my best to do programs like yours. And I think that's one, you know, obviously I've learned that the power of the medium is you know, the media. I was down at Foxborough's Founders Day. I've been invited to talk with the firefighters from the 9 union members from the 9 local communities. So I'm trying my best to reach out in that regard. I think that this election will be decided after Labor Day. Between Labor Day, the general election is October the 17th. The primary for the Democrats and Republicans is the 19th of September. So between Labor Day and the 19th of September, you're going to have a lot of people fighting at the Democrats, Republicans. And then after the 19th of September to the 17th of October, you're probably going to actually be able to have a little discussion, and people will be able to size up the 3, the Democrat, the Republican, and the Independent, as their choice. And I'm going to try to do my best during. It's hard to get people to listen in the summertime, but I think after Labor Day, I'm going to do my best to be as many places as I can, knock on as many doors as I can, make as many phone calls as I can to get my message out.
Now, the people of Medfield and obviously in this area, they have a rare situation where they're voting for someone who isn't currently in the seat. None of the candidates are taking over this position. So what should people be looking for if experience in the seat isn't the actual answer? What should people be looking for?
How about just experience in general? And I think that what I bring is a deep understanding not only of Massachusetts and the area and the community, but I'm a resident of Medfield, but I'm also somebody who has gone to school in the state, gone to high school and college here. And then I've covered the issues front to back, up and down. And people will say to me, Joe, well, what's the issue? Well, what are the issues that most confront you? And I say, well, I can tell you that there are some major issues, and obviously we could talk about them in terms of whether it's the MBTA, train in Walpole and Foxborough, or developers here in Medfield, greedy developers. But I can just tell you that I think that for the most part, it's these issues, whether it's your schools or taxes, are things I've been covering for years, the overrides. I mean, some of the issues are very, very similar. So I've researched them. In many cases, I feel like I understand them. And I feel like I'm like a step ahead at that point, because I'll be able to say, okay, what is it you want here in Medfield? What's the end result that everybody wants? Okay, all right. Who do we need to talk to get there? Okay, now I know what I need to do. Let's go get it done.
So now let's just say come that time, you get elected, you're in the office now. Everyone always likes to point to the first 100 days. So what's your first 100 days going to be like? What do you think?
Well, this is different too, because it's a special election. And as soon as if I were lucky enough to be elected, I think that if I was elected in October, I think you're up for re-election again.
Pretty quickly.
The following November, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like 13 months later, you're up for re-election again. So your first 100 days, I think, would be, again, there's going to be, I think, a learning curve for anybody who sits here and says, "Oh, I know the job. I know the job." I don't think you know the job until you get there. I understand the issues, but I think that there's going to be a little bit of a learning curve in terms of that. But I think for the most part, when I arrive on Beacon Hills, I hope I will, people will know me, will welcome me, and I hope that in that period of time, there will be people here across the 9 communities in this Senate district that will say, "Joe, this is the most important thing. What we need to do right now is we need to do something about, school funding, the school funding formula, or we need to do something about these 40B developers that are trying to put up these massive projects, or we need certain protections." And I think at that point, I would just, sit down, make a list, and say, okay, let's start tackling these one at a time.
Absolutely. And then for the final question in this round, why are you the best candidate for this?
I think that I'm honest, I'm focused, I'm determined. Few things in your life present a great deal of clarity. I mean, sometimes you say, "Oh, I know that's the woman I'm going to marry," or "That's the job I want." When I was standing outside Shaw's in Medfield, and I got the notification on my phone that Jim Timilty was going to resign this seat, it was this moment of clarity for me. It was just this, "Joe, this is what you need to do. This is what you want to do. This is what you should do." And for me, it comes with a burden in terms of you've got to make sure you do it right. But it comes with, I think, this is something I can do and can do well.
Now, we're going to do a couple quick answers back and forth.
All right.
So just like we said, this is to get to know people. I think the best way to do it, we're going to fire some questions at you and see what you got. So, Joe, what's your favorite food?
Chicken Parmesan.
What's your favorite sport to watch?
Football, Patriots.
And your favorite sport to play?
Well, I was a baseball player more than anything growing up.
What position were you?
Well, I was an outfielder. I could hit, but I was more of an outfielder.
Did you play any instruments?
I played a guitar when I was a child for a while. That was really the only dabbling I had. That was the guitar.
Do you have any hidden talent?
I like to cook, and I would have to say that sometimes on Sundays I'm pretty good at making up an Italian meal, or I also will spend time in the yard, whether it's trying to work in the yard and make it look a little better, landscaping, things like that.
And a little green thumb?
Yeah.
What's your most used social media site?
Well, I think it's Snapchat or Instagram, but that's because of my 3 kids. And they will tell you that, oh, Instagram is the way to go now, but Snapchat was the way to go. So I don't know. I'm in between Snapchat and Instagram in terms of, obviously for the campaign we have a Facebook page as well. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, go ahead and give yourself a promotion. What's the Facebook page someone can follow you?
Well, it's joeshortsleeve.com. So you go right there and it links you right to my Facebook page. joeshortsleeve.com.
And now, what's your favorite team?
Well, my favorite, I mean, I'm a season ticket holder with the Boston Red Sox. So I think I have to say Boston Red Sox.
What's your favorite holiday?
You know, I think it's all about family. And the ones that bring the families together, obviously, are my favorite. I mean, I think growing up, I always loved the 4th of July. But as I got older, you know, it was more about Thanksgiving and Christmas. So, and I think again, if I had to give you one answer, I'd probably have to say Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. it's the food for me. What's the last thing you read?
It's funny, I just finished John Grissom's book, Innocent Man. I read a lot of Grissom, and he's obviously a fiction writer, but he just did a nonfiction work, and it's his first nonfiction work, and it had to do with the baseball player who, I think it's Ron Williamson, who was falsely incarcerated for murder, and the true story. But I just read that last week.
Now, this I think is the hardest question.
Okay.
Describe yourself in 3 words.
Honest, focused, compassionate.
Where is your favorite vacation spot?
Cape Cod, no question about it. My family has a lot of Cape Cod connections. I was just down in Katuitt, but my daughter's getting married at Craigville Beach. My brother is the owner, editor, publisher of Cape Cod Life magazine, so Cape Cod.
And what's your sports or activities you did in high school?
I was a baseball player for the most part. Wasn't good enough to make the varsity, which to this day bothers me, but I also played football. I played football, 1 year of football at BC High, but I was always sort of a dabbling in baseball and football.
If you win, first person you stand up and thank?
Well, I think, you know, here it comes down to family, and obviously my children, but my brother also lives here in town with his wife, and I'd have to start with the family. But the other people that are important, you know, it's the folks at the Liberty Square Group in Boston where I work who really encouraged me in this endeavor, and Scott Furson is the owner of the Liberty Square Group.
Anyone in the world you can have dinner with?
And I've thought about that. It's an interesting question. But I grew up a Kennedy Democrat, and down on Cape Cod, and I would have to say it would be John F. Kennedy. And maybe that sounds like an answer other people give, but I don't know. John F. Kennedy would have to be the. It's got to be up there in terms of who people want to have dinner with. I mean,
not a bad one.
Not a bad one.
Not a bad choice. And then final question: why should people vote for you?
Because I think I can deliver. Let me not say. I know I can deliver. I understand. I understand the community. I understand the issues. I know the players. And I want to do this. I'm energized. I'm like, let's go, folks. Let's go. Let's have a conversation. Let's not fight about it. Let's go up there and get something done that makes people in these 9 communities happy.
Fantastic. You're out of the hot seat.
Okay.
Senate candidate Joe Shortsleeve. Joe, thanks for having us, and thank you for watching.
Well, I think that I'm somebody who understands the system. I'm compassionate in terms of my approach. I'm socially liberal. I'm fiscally conservative. Some people have described Jim Timilty as the most conservative Democrat on Beacon Hill. I'm an independent, but the same people have described me as the most like Jim Timilty, that I resemble him the most in terms of my approach to every day. I think that this district tends to be, obviously it's, the makeup is I think about 65% independent or more. And I think that as an independent, but somebody who is socially liberal and fiscally conservative, I can best represent the issues of this district. And this district is unique. It tends to be more conservative than the rest of the state.